Hi everybody, welcome back to Far From Normal's online art class. I'm so glad you joined me again this week. I'm excited for what we're going to do this week. It's going to be very interesting. What you're going to need is a pencil and a ruler and just a few sheets of plain paper. That's all we'll need for today's class. You can also grab some colored pencils for the project we're going to do at the end if you'd like to add some color to it. So today we're going to be talking about perspective. What perspective is it's the way we see things. That's the definition of it. In drawing, it's a way to draw things so that it gives them depth or shows distance. There's a couple kinds. Today we're going to focus on what's called one-point perspective. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just a few things you need to know what they mean so that we can get started with drawing. The first one is what's called a horizon line. What the horizon is, you might know this already, but if you've ever been to the beach or if you've ever seen a picture of the beach, if you stand on the beach and you can see where the sky and the water meet and there's that nice line, that's what's called the horizon line. Your horizon line is where your sky and your land meet. The next thing you need to know is what's called a vanishing point. A vanishing point in drawing, and when we're doing our perspective drawings, is where all of the lines seem to be going away from you. The best way to illustrate this is for me to show you a few examples of how it works and show you a couple real life examples of how everything seems to be getting smaller in the distance. You might know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to show you a couple pictures now just in case so that you understand a little bit better what I'm talking about. So now you can see a little bit better what I'm talking about, how you can tell in those pictures as the buildings or the trees get further away from you, they get smaller and eventually they vanish. And that's what your vanishing point is. So now we're going to take these ideas of perspective and horizon and vanishing points, and we're going to talk about how to put them together on a piece of paper to create a drawing. So let's start with the basics. I'm going to show you how to lay your paper out. Go ahead and grab your ruler and your pencil and a piece of paper, and let's get to work on that. So the first thing we're going to start out with is our horizon line. Like I mentioned, your horizon line is where your land or water meet the sky. It's where your sky and whatever else you're drawing are going to meet. So, depending on what you're going to be drawing, you can put your horizon line anywhere on your paper. For the sake of this activity and just learning how to draw in perspective, we're going to start with our line just a little bit lower than halfway down the paper. So all you have to do for that is take your ruler and put it about halfway down your paper and just draw a line straight across. Now this line is one, I've drawn it pretty dark, but you're going to want to draw it lightly because you will be erasing parts of it later. So make sure you're drawing nice and light, even though I might draw a little bit darker. I want you to be able to see what I'm putting on my paper. So the next thing I mentioned was the vanishing point. You remember in the pictures I showed you how all the things in them seems to get smaller. Well, anything that's headed towards your vanishing point is going to continue to get smaller and smaller. So we are going to put our vanishing point as an actual dot here, right in the middle of our horizon line. Now this is something that it can vary where it is, but once again, just for the sake of this activity and just learning how to draw things in perspective, we are going to start with our vanishing point here. Now, once we're done with this, we are going to start drawing some guidelines. What you have to remember is that everything that you're going to be drawing is going to go back to this vanishing point. Now, in the next part of this activity, we're going to start really working on this and drawing a picture with it. So we're not going to draw a lot of guidelines for now because that may change just a little. But first, we want to go from the corner of our paper to our vanishing point and just draw a very light line. We're going to go ahead and draw two of these on the bottom and two on the top because they're going to help us out here in a minute. So let's go ahead and do that. almost like an X across your paper, but depending on where you put your vanishing point, it might not be exactly in the center. So go ahead and measure from your corners to your vanishing point and draw some nice light guidelines. There from the bottom, and then some from the top. These are going to give us a sense of how our picture is going to be laid out and how our drawing is going to end up looking. So go ahead and put those in to the corners. Okay, you can already start to see, if you look at it, like this could be a real wide road tapering off into the distance. So this is going to help us as we get started with drawing in perspective. But remember, make sure these are light. I hope you can see mine. I drew them a little lighter because we're probably going to be erasing them here in a minute. Okay. So now that you understand the basics of how to lay out your paper, how to create your guidelines, and how to put in your horizon and your vanishing point, we're now going to take that one step further and we're going to add in some details. We're going to go ahead and try to draw a street. We're going to add trees, we're going to add buildings. Now, as we do it, I'm going to show you how I do it, but you can feel free to arrange things however you want so that in the end you have a finished picture that you like. Okay, so we're going to take this now and we're going to work on making a drawing. So the first thing I want you to do is let's go ahead and draw a road. We're going to draw a road going back into the distance towards our vanishing point. So you're going to decide how wide you want the bottom of your road. So if you want to mark on your paper about how wide you want your road to be at the bottom, it doesn't have to be super wide. Mine is probably a little more than 1/3 of the width of my paper. And then you're going to go from those points you made at the bottom, use your ruler, and you're going to take those lines back towards your vanishing point. My ruler wiggled a little. Let me fix that. Okay. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. From your point where you want to be the edge of your road, back to your vanishing point. Okay, so now you have your road that you're going to be working with. Now from here, we're going to start working on drawing some trees and some buildings alongside of it. Now you have some decisions to make here, whether you want to maybe have a sidewalk alongside your road, if you want to do buildings, if you're going to want to do street lights, whatever you want to do. I'm going to work on this side. I am going to add a little sidewalk. So what you have to remember is anything you add, it's going to go back to the vanishing point. So if I want my sidewalk to be about that wide down here at the bottom, I'm going to take that line and I'm going to draw from there to my vanishing point. And then from there, if I want to draw a tree, I'm going to line it up with the edge of my sidewalk or wherever I want it to be in relationship to my sidewalk. Maybe I want it to be like right in here. And I'm going to draw it as tall as I want it to be. So let's say I want my tree to be nice and tall here at the front. So I'm going to sketch it in. I'm going to draw in my tree. Now, because I have a guideline here, up here that we put in, I'm going to know that my next tree is going to be that much shorter than the first tree that I drew. So I can sketch it in. Now this is the same as if you're drawing light posts, if you're drawing buildings, and then the next tree is going to be a lot smaller. And you can see there how your guideline helps you to determine the relationship in size between your one that's going to be the closest to you and the one that's going to be furthest away. So that gives you a good sense of how big or small to make your trees as you go. So then, if we're doing trees on this side, maybe we want to add a building on this side. Now, with buildings, what you're going to want to do is, once again, if you want to put in a sidewalk, let's go ahead and put in a little sidewalk to determine where we want our buildings to go. Now, if we're going to draw a building, when we're drawing in perspective, our lines that are vertical are up and down lines. We want them to be nice and straight. So you want to make sure you're lining up your straight edge or your ruler with the side of your paper. That helps to make sure you're drawing it nice and straight. And then you're going to draw a nice straight line up and down. Once again, you're going to be using your guidelines as a way to show you how your buildings are going to be looking in perspective. So go ahead and draw one line, and then we're going to draw another line a couple inches away from it. And this is going to become the front of our building. So this line here down at the bottom is going to be the bottom of our building. And then this line here that is actually our guideline is going to become the top of our building. So you can see how the buildings even are going to be going back in the way we're looking at it. So then from there, if we want to draw the side of the building, the sides that are facing us, that aren't looking away from us, are going to be straight across. So once again, the corner of your paper is always a great place to line up your ruler so that it's nice and straight, and you can make your building as wide as you want it to be, and then slide your ruler up and make it just as wide there at the top. So we're going to add that line in. And then you can connect these two lines and complete the side of this building. Okay, so then from there, you can see how now you've got a nice rectangular shaped building. So then you can start erasing your guidelines that are in there. And from here, you are able to start adding windows, doors, everything like that. Now, what I want you to remember is that anything that is on the front of this building is going to also point to the vanishing point. So if I'm going to put in a door, I'm going to want to line up wherever I want the door to be, the height of my door, with the vanishing point. And then I'm going to put my line in there. And then I can add in my vertical lines, once again keeping your ruler nice and straight. You can add in the vertical lines that are going to make your door. Mine's actually just a little bit crooked here. And then any windows you would want to add. And you can see how if I'm going to put a window here, or if I'm going to put a window way up here, the angle of my ruler is going to change a lot. But you want to use that vanishing point as almost a pivot point to help you decide where and how you want your lines to be going back. So that's going to help you. You just want to keep your ruler handy, and depending on what you're drawing, you always want to take it back to the vanishing point. Now from here, if you wanted to draw a smaller building, you don't have to go all the way up to your guideline, but that is also where you're going to put your, you want to use that as a reference for how tall you want your next building to be, because you don't want to make the next building gigantic compared to this one, because that's going to not help with the illusion that things are moving away from you. So now what we can do is we can take this and we can keep working on it. We can erase guidelines, we can add in details, and then we can have a finished product at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and work on mine and finish it up and show it to you, and you can keep working on yours and make it look however you want it to look. Okay, so mine isn't completely finished at this point. I could still add a whole bunch of details. I can add color, I can add a lot more, but I wanted to just show you guys after a few minutes what sort of details you can add and how it affects your drawing. Even little things like flowers, you want to remember that they are going to get smaller as they go. So you can always add in a guideline, or you can just sort of eyeball it like I did and figure out how their proportion would be between this first flower and the very last one that you can see way up here. The other thing is letters, signs, drawings, pictures, everything is all going to go back to that vanishing point. So when I added these letters, you can see that I drew in some guidelines to tell me about how big they were going to be. This takes a lot of tweaking, a lot of work, and it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better at it you get. But I want you to remember is make sure you're using your ruler or drawing in guidelines. Make sure you're drawing light. You can see how much erasing I did, and actually you can see where I broke my own rules here and drew a little too dark and it didn't completely erase. So you want to make sure initially, like these guidelines here that I drew that are nice and light, they will go away very easily. And then you can always even draw things back here in the background. You might be able to, you might draw mountains or a whole city, whatever you want. But this is just a good basis, a good foundation to start with drawing in perspective and understanding how all of this works. So I would love to see you guys finish pictures if you want to share them on the Facebook group. I hope that you enjoyed working on these. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or post it in our Facebook group so that I can answer any questions about this you might have, because I know it can be tricky sometimes. So now you should have a pretty finished drawing. I know you probably still have some things to work on. Like I said, you can add color in, you can add lots and lots of details. There's all sorts of things you can do with this idea. You can add mountains in the background, you can add trees in the background, you can do whatever you want, but just always remember how your perspective needs to be. Remember your vanishing point, remember your guidelines, and work within those. So you can keep practicing this over the week. You can practice maybe moving your vanishing point over and making your road go a different direction. See how that works for you. There's all kinds of different things you can do to play with this idea and get a lot of different effects. Next week, we're going to talk about perspective again. We're going to be talking about two-point perspective. So I'll explain all that next week. You're going to need, once again, the same things we needed for this week, just a paper and a pencil and a ruler and your colored pencils or crayons or markers if you'd like to have them. So I hope you will all join me again next week. I can't wait to see you then.